A very good morning. It's 8:31. Welcome to day 3 of our 25th annual seminar. It's a bright and lovely day in Entebbe, very sunny. And thank you for keeping time. The hall is very full, we hardly have chairs. Thank you for keeping time. Our presenter is in the house. Our session chair will be CPA Walter Yorac, Nono, Director, Internal Audit, Makerere University. He's also a practitioner at Evloa and Company, CPA. Walter has a number of memberships, including being a member of his own family. He's also a member of ACCA, Institute of Corporate Governance, and sits on a number of committees. The CV is quite long, I could go on and on. It's on the Audit Committee of NDA, ICPAU Education Committee, and previously worked as Head Internal Audit, National Council for Higher Education. Walter, you're very welcome. Members, you're encouraged to ask your questions via Slido. I'm sure the topic at hand is a very interesting one. Land transactions, transfer, procedures, and management. And to take us through, our presenter will be Ms. Naome Kabanda, who will be properly introduced by the chair. Once again, welcome. Like I said, I encourage those who are still on the way to hurry up because we are running out of chairs, and it's a very bright day in Entebbe. Thank you. So I'll hand over to the session chair, Mr. Walter Yorac Nono.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you, the members who are physically here, and our members who are attending virtually. Today's topic, I think, is of interest to all of us. Our presenter, most of the people you see here, I think 99.9% deal with a lot of land, both in the city and in their villages. And I think the topic will be of interest to many of them. Some of them have had challenges with land, so they may have some good questions for you. Good people, allow me to introduce our speaker for today on the topic of land transactions, transfer procedures, and management. Our presenter today is Ms. Naome Kabanda. I've got a very lengthy CV, and I've been having a bit of challenge to summarize it. You will agree with me if you are dealing with a lawyer who deals with land matters, who deals with women affairs, who is into research and publications, such a CV might have a challenge. But allow me to try and summarize it in one page. Mrs. Kabanda is a land lawyer working as the acting director, land management with the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, Kampala. She has experience which expands over 17 years in the field of law, land administration and registration, policy development, and women's land rights. She holds a master's degree in law from Georgetown University, USA, which she obtained in 2001. She's an alumni of Women's Law and Publicity Program, Georgetown University, USA, where she was a fellow 2000-2001. She holds a bachelor's degree in law of Makerere University. She has vast experience in land and land-related issues, like we have indicated. She has trained and also acquired capacity as a practitioner over a period of time. She has authored and co-authored a number of papers and has made presentations and spoken at a number of international and local fora on issues of land and land rights, gender and legal reforms. She was very instrumental in the development of the Uganda National Land Policy, which was approved in 2013, and now it's the National Land Policy, the National Land Policy Implementation Secretariat. This is a researcher on land issues, more so policy development for what constitutes a good policy, and is a regular speaker at famous annual World Bank Land and Poverty Conference forums. She's a member of the steering committee of ICPAU. In addition, Ms. Kabanda has vast experience in the areas of both land administration and land registration for both land and property rights, which she has obtained through her service and work at the ministry responsible for lands, housing, and urban development. As part of our work, she has assisted women to register their land and property rights in the land offices, sensitizing them on benefits of registering land rights, and simplifying for them land registration procedures as a way of increasing their security of tenure on land. In addition, she is the coordinator of all civil society organizations working on land issues in the ministry. She has directed and researched and coordinated research projects on land and gender natural resources. She's also part of the team involved in initiating policy and legal reforms in the land sector, including the Land Act 1998 and the Uganda National Land Policy 2013. Ms. Kabanda currently aids the National Land Policy Implementation Secretariat in the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development. She also spearheaded the development of the gender strategy on land for implementing Uganda's National Land Policy 2019, which is under implementation with strategies to implement women's land rights. Ladies and gentlemen, both here and virtually, welcome with me Ms. Naome Kabanda, make a presentation.
Thank you, presenter. Thank you, chair. That's pretty long. I think like the chair has said, I have had a long stay in the land sector and I've done a lot of work, especially on legal reforms. And right now as acting director, I look at policies, I look at laws. I'm basically reviewing most of these laws which came into place, I think 20 years ago. Looking at the Land Act, where are we coming from? The land policy, you know we do laws, but when we look at the prevailing circumstances, then we think about reviews. And when you implement a law, you realize you may also have gaps. So my presentation for today is basically to inform the participants on the basics of land transactions, transfers, procedures, and management, general management of land in this country. Can you allow me to put off this? Thank you. So when I was approached by the coordinator of this program, he told me, you want to know about land transactions. And I said, these are educated people. What don't they know about land transactions, transfer procedures, and management? Then I thought through, what kind of information should this group get to know? And so my paper is so simple. Actually, I sent to him 2 papers because I'm a trainer. we basically use a lot of pictorial. Pictorials convey information in the simplest way. And we have discovered over time that in most of these conferences and most of the seminars, they are going back to pictorials. I don't know why, but we seem to be going back to pictorials. Can you please? So I will discuss the paper. It will talk about land transactions, how we transfer our land through the 4-10-year systems, and then the general land management. Where are our reforms? And you as a user of the services of the land sector, what do you have to look for when you visit Ministry of Lands, for example? So land in Uganda is governed by Article 237, which provides that land belongs to the citizens of Uganda and vests in them in accordance with 4-10-year systems. We have customary tenure, we have leasehold, we have freehold and milo. And when you become a land manager, you realize that land is law. So we are working with the Constitution and we are working with a lot of other laws. So what is customary tenure, if somebody ever asked you? Customary tenure is the largest tenure that Ugandans hold their land under. Surprisingly, 20%, it's only 20% of Uganda's land that is registered. And customary tenure in some areas is 80%. West Nile, Northern Uganda, the percentage under customary tenure is almost 80%. So the registration we are talking about of 20% of Uganda's land, which is registered, is on milo and some little few freeholds. Then you have some little land under lease. So we needed to know what is customary tenure and how is it governed in most parts of the country. And so customary tenure is basically governed by customs, rules, and regulations of the community in which that land is found. While for freehold tenure, it is a system of ownership which involves the owning of registered land in perpetuity or indefinitely. Leasehold, on the other hand, is a system where the owner of the land is granted. Leasehold is a system where the owner of the land is granted just an exclusive use of the land on a specific period and under specific terms and conditions. Most land in urban areas is usually held under this tenure system of leases. Mild tenure means the holding of registered land in perpetuity, but having roots of allotment in that 1900 Uganda Agreement, which was formerly known as Uganda Agreement. And mild tenure is characterized by dual ownership. That is the description of mild ownership. What are other legislations which govern the management of land in this country? We have the Land Act. We have the Land Act, that is the principal law. We have the Registration of Titles Act. This act governs the registration as it reads. We have the Surveyors Act. We have the Mortgage Act. We have the Physical Planning Act. We have the Land Acquisition Act. And we have Surveyors Registration Act. This one is where, like, you have the profession being governed for accountants. The surveyors equally have a registration act. Then we have Architects Registration Act. So those are some of the acts that govern land. Like I said at the beginning, land is law, and we have all those laws. But we also have policies as the bigger frameworks that guide our land transactions. We have the National Land Policy 2013, that's a bit recent. And we have the National Land Use Policy, which has been reviewed. We have the Housing Policy 2016 and the Urban Policy 2017. So all these policies and laws give us the basis upon which we manage land in this country. So Uganda's land administration system and the institutional structure are decentralized at national level, regional level, and district level. However, we have some institutions even below the district level that manage land. At the national level, we have the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, which plays basically the roles of policy formulation, standard setting, national planning, monitoring, and advisory, plus backup for our decentralized institutions. It also plays the role of coordination and harmonizing land activities in respect to physical planning, to lands and survey, and general land administration. So when you look at the land management institutions, because at the national level we have the ministry with that law, and then we have all these land administration institutions, which you ought to understand what do they do and at what levels do they operate. We have Uganda it's a constitutional body appointed with the supervision of government land, only government land across the districts. Government land may be registered or it may not be registered, but once we identify that that land has activities on government or for government, then the management is strictly lying with the Uganda Land Commission. We have the MZOs, or Ministry Zonal Offices. The ministry has established 22 ministry zonal offices. These are a replica of the services that were being rendered at the center. So every service now is in those 22 ministry zonal offices. So if you have your land, it's located in Gulu, then there's a ministry zonal office at that point, and there's total registration. You get the title from that side. If your land is located in Mbale, then there's a ministry zonal office at that point, and your registration, you are expected to go to Mbale. So location will determine which ministry zonal point you go to. And the activities at that point or in those ministry zonal offices include survey and mapping. So you have the agents of the Commissioner Surveys and Mapping. You have the agent of Commissioner Land Registration. You have the agent of Commissioner Land Administration, Valuation, and Physical Planning. So it is total decentralization of land management. Then you have the District Land Office. In many of the districts, they have a district land office, except where the district is very new. But we expect every district to have a district land office. And the role of the district is that it has the technical people, still replica of the ministry and the ministry zonosis. So you'll find a surveyor at that level, you'll find a value at that level, you'll find a physical planner, and you'll find a land officer if you are talking about management of leases and freeholds. So these responsible officers are supposed to give technical advice to the district land board, because at that level is where you have a district land board. So anybody who wants to transact in freehold, in leasehold, and in certificates of customary ownership, you definitely have to visit the district land board in the area where your land is located. So you can see that decentralization. National level, zonal office, district office. And this district land board is supposed to manage the affairs of that respective district, but only in the management, mark my words, only in the management of leases, of freeholds, and certificates of customary ownership. Milo is not managed by a district land board, wherever it is located. Milo land is outside the management of a district land board. Government land equally is also outside the management of a district land board. A district land board is appointed by the respective district council, and the names of membership is then forwarded to the Minister of Lands for final approval. The vetting is done at the center, and then we train these people, and they start to manage your land for 5 years. Their term of office is 5 years, renewable once. So below the district land board, you have other land management institutions. You have ALC, which stands for Area Land Committee. So an area land committee is supposed to serve and assist the district land board in ascertaining your boundaries, verifying the ownership, and they must obtain signatures of your neighbors. They are expected to visit the locus, the lawyers will call it locus, or the ground or the site where the land is located, and they will write an inspection report saying the land belongs to Naome, the neighbors are so and so, on the left is this person, on the right is this one. So they will draw the sketch of how your land looks like. That institution is very important because that is where disputes ensue. If the area land committee does not visit the site, if they don't write a proper report, then the work of the district land board will have been what? Will have been complicated, because the district land board does not have capacity to visit all these areas to ascertain the rightful people who are applying for land. And then we have the certificate of customary ownership. The certificate of customary ownership is the document where if somebody owns customary land, the Land Act says you can apply to get a certificate of customary ownership. This one does not require surveying, formal surveying, or formal registration. It can be gotten at this sub-county level, but the approval process is obtained through this institution, the Area Land Committee. They have to verify your boundaries, they have to mark, they produce a print, and then the neighbors, and then you are able to get your land at that level. And in our act, we call the sub-county chief a recorder. They will just record the rights in your land, and you get your document. That is our organigram as a ministry. We have 3 directorates. There's Directorate of Land Management, the Directorate of Physical Planning and Urban Development, and Directorate of Housing. So you can see the organigram on this left side. You have the Ministry Zone Office, below it District Land Office, below it the Land Board, Area Land Committee, and Physical Planning. But you may realize that on the other side, you have the constitutional bodies. You have Uganda Land Commission, but you also have semi-autonomous National Physical Planning Board, which is the overall body responsible for approval of plans, physical development plans, wherever they are. That is the body responsible. Then you have National Housing and Construction Company. Then you have the Architects Registration Board. So that is the organigram of the ministry. Now, when it comes to procedures of acquiring land, who may acquire land? An individual, a family, a community, a company, an NGO, local government, registered trustees, statutory authorities, and agencies. But you need to note that non-citizens under the 1995 Constitution can only acquire these codes. So they cannot acquire Milo, neither can they acquire freehold. What are the basic procedures? If you want to get a Milo title, you must have in your possession a transfer form. Then the consent forms. The process requires that you have the photocopies of that duplicate certificate of title. We call it duplicate because the other copy is called a registry copy. So the one they issue to you, which has owner's copy, is what we call in land a duplicate certificate. So you come to my office and you say, Kabanda, please assist me to register my Milo title. I've bought a small plot in area X. I will ask you, do you have the transfer forms? Do you have the photographs, passport photographs, their requirements? Do you have the valuation assessment? If you don't have the valuation assessment, you must also submit that assessment to the valuer, all of whom the services have now been decentralized, those ministry zonal points. What if you are applying for certificate of customary ownership in your location? You fill in forms. They are standard forms by law, and those forms will go to what I have told you, the Area Land Committee, which will inspect your land, adjudicate any disputes, those disputes which may be simple, maybe your line is not passing here, or your chibanja has extended or whatever. They adjudicate those petty disputes, but they must come up with a sketch showing how your land looks like. And then it is that application that they will submit to the District Land Board, making a recommendation whether the land should be given to you or the land belongs to somebody else. What if you want to get a freehold title? You still fill in those forms, and I have told the coordinator the forms and what they are called is in another presentation, which you will access. And you fill in those relevant forms. You still have to go to the Area Land Committee to do the same work of inspections and ascertain whether your boundaries are your boundaries, whether your neighbors are not complaining. And once that process is done, then your application will be subjected to physical planning, because it's now a requirement that you cannot get a title of whatever nature except if that title is compliant with physical planning requirements. What are we trying to avoid? We are trying to avoid the public applying for land which falls in wetlands or in gazetted areas, or land that belongs to government, or land that is what we call public open spaces. So physical planning is a requirement, and under the Physical Planning Act 2010, Uganda was declared a planning area. That means there are plans for the urban areas and plans for rural areas. The users are defined, and it will be the physical planning committee to inform you that where you want to put user X, you want to grow, or you want to build a specific user area, that you must comply to the physical planning requirements. So that application then, if it passes the requirements of physical planning, then it can be forwarded to the district land board. And once the district land board sits in their own meeting, they can either approve, defer, or make some comments for you to improve on your application. But at the end of that day, once those approvals have been done, the application is then forwarded to the ministry zonal point, and you will have your title issued. So, because the services of surveyors were privatized, government no longer issues instructions for you to get the deed plans, what we call prints. The general public will call them prints, but for us we call them deed plans. Those ones are the ones which will show exactly. The sketch is translated into actual area when the actual survey is carried out. So you find then that the print is what the surveyor will produce. And for some people, when they get that print, they think they have got a title. They will stop there. So when you ask them, but where is your title? They will pull out the print. Because the print shows you the exact area, the shape of your land, the plot, and law. Now, with that information, you are able to present your application. Now we call it, it is now full application, and the district land board will grant you, and the MSO will process your title. So survey services are privatized. So it depends on how you negotiate with that private surveyor on charges. Leaseholds. I know that majority of the land in many districts is still leases. And this has been basic because the leases have been with us for longer than the rest of the tenures. And when you are talking about land outside Uganda, basically, you are talking about leaseholds. The Constitution gives us the tenures, but the processes, some of them are similar, while others are very different. So for leaseholds, if you identified land in your village and it is formerly public land, it's not owned by any person, you can go and apply for that land. And it was to do Uganda Land Commission that people would get leases. But with the coming into force of the 1995 Constitution, they created the district land boards. So now you have to take your application to the district land board. And still the process of the area land committee comes in. They have to still go and look at the boundaries, you pay the relevant fees, and you are able to process your title at the MSO. But you have to note that there are leases issued by kingdoms. In the central region, we have Uganda Land Board. It's an administrative institution recognized by law. It processes all land, all leases on Kabaka's land. So if you are seated in any area and they tell you you are sitting on Kabaka's land, the procedure, you have to go to Uganda Land Board. Many people keep asking, but why do we have to go to Uganda Land Board? Because the land in Uganda is owned by the king. And so they have a specific board. This is the same thing in Busoga. The kingdom has land. Equally in Toro and Bunyoro. So they have those administrative land boards where you have to apply for a lease if you want to regularize yourself on their lands. So that is generally land administration, but we are working on a lot of reforms. Majorly, the ministry has computerized all the land records. We are using a national land information system, and this is what I've been talking about, total registration at the ministry zonal point. Wachiso, Kampala, Jinja, Mbale, Soroti, Moroto, Gulu, Bida, Arua. You find our national land information system is operational. This land information system has captured all the data on land, all the information on land. So we have a valuation layer on that system. And if you pay your, the land is valued and you are supposed to pay premium, it's just entered online. And the valuation is linked to URA. So URA is able also to see the other side that this person, his assessment is so much money. And then when you pay, you bring back that receipt and it's entered on the system, and they will be able to see directly that the monies have been paid. So that has eliminated a lot of fraud. So URA is able to collect more money from valuation services. It has that physical planning layer, which I have already prescribed. It gives you where are wetlands, where are reserve game reserves, and all any other land that is gazetted. Before, we had a lot of problems with the manual system. That's where you'd find double titling, because we could not see that this land is already registered. But now, if you bring in your first registration application, we are able to know that this land has already been registered. So we are avoiding double titling. And the computerized titles, if some of you have processed them, they are produced through the system. They are not typed. Before, we would type all transactions. Now we print through that system. And they have features like barcodes, which if you screen it, it has information of your name, the plot number, and where the land is located. So we are now able to detect the fake titles from those that are genuine. It has deed plans attached to the certificate itself, and it also has the user, and we now insist those photographs are scanned together with the application. There are benefits, of course, of these reforms. We have established what we call public portals at URSB. You can go and do a quick search on your land. You pay some fee, 20,000, and you can search on your land, wherever you are. You go to URSB and you get that quick search. This has helped the people in the diaspora, because before they were not so sure whether this land information system would not grab their land. But every time they are able to search, then they are confident that my land is still there, it's intact, although I'm out of the country. So we can now do quick searches. You pay 10,000, 20,000, and then you get your search. We are able to detect forgeries and then to identify land which should not be titled. Where do we want to go? We are integrating this land information system with other government agencies like NERA, URSB, ICPAU, so that we have a consolidated integrated system. This one will help us to know where all the registration is being done. And like nowadays, you cannot get a title if you don't have your NERA. You cannot process anything if you don't have Ndagamuntu. So these are some of the agencies we are working with to ensure that we streamline land management in this country. We have established public portals. We are going to be putting them in different places so that in one point regionally, you are able to access those services. These will be of good use to the corporate bodies like banks, advocates, surveyors, valuers, and yourselves if you are a daily user of land services. We are developing a database for land values. That has been a big challenge. We don't know the value of land, and valuation is an opinion. You find the private valuer is valuing something different. Government valuer is valuing another value, but for the same property. So we want to establish a database that we shall be referring to land values, which will be updated from time to time. But at least you will be able to know that in my area, land ranges from this point, so much money to this, so much money. Legal reviews is part of our work. We are looking at all our laws. They are very old. The Registration of Titles Act is very old, 1935. Land Acquisition Act, which has been a lot of debate, how to acquire land and who should acquire land, and amendments of the Constitution in regard to land acquisition have been a serious debate, but we are looking at reviewing those laws. The Land Act, Uganda Land Commission, Survey Act, and then to come up with a valuation law to guide not only the profession, but their services. We are scaling up on what we call systematic demarcation because the registration level is still very low, and we are scaling up through programs like systematic land demarcation. We can go into an area and we survey the whole sub-county. This is very costly, and we are being supported by development partners so that we increase on the surveys and mapping of Uganda's land. We are also issuing a lot of certificates of customary ownership in predominantly communal areas. These ones have been well received, and the people who have got certificates of customary ownership are using them for a number of purposes. I've seen them being used as mortgages. I've seen them being used in all these commercial areas to ensure that land under customary tenure is also brought into the market. Not for the worse, but we are encouraging much more family titles because most of those lands are still held by clans. And so we encourage family titles where you have registration of all the people in that specific community so that we don't have disputes arising in the future by one person exploiting the rest of the others. I think that is basically what I wanted to share with you. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to receive them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. You may take the questions seated if you prefer that. Good people, I want to thank you, both the people attending here and also online. I've seen people are very attentive, trying to see how best they can deal with these land transactions. It is now time for questions, and like we've been doing, expect you to send your questions through Slido. We already have a few, and we'll be taking those ones which have already come. I will be taking maybe 2 or 3 at a time, and then we'll look at it. And the first one there is, what would be the advantage, if any, of converting from customary tenure to freehold. And then and the second question there, do we have land transfer fee structures known to the public? Otherwise, many Ugandans have been cheated by lawyers due to the gap. You could take those ones as we wait for others.
What would be the advantage of converting customary tenure into freehold? Like I said, customary tenure is still the biggest percentage of land tenure in this country. And freeholds are really very few. That is why the Constitution saw it fit to put all these tenures at par, at the same level. And there is no more need for anybody to convert a customary tenure into freehold because they have been equated. And once you have your certificate of customary ownership, the rights in that certificate are the same as the rights in a freehold. Before, we didn't have a document. Now we are producing documents, and that has helped people not to convert. Because once you convert your land into freehold, like the tenure connects, the protection of these other users, who we call the secondary right users, will have been lost. And the discussions we are having with people who are receiving these certificates of customary ownership, it gives more protection to the family, the users, because you can register as many people as you can. Whereas in freehold, it is limiting to how many people can go on that certificate. So there's no more need to convert. The conversion happened before because customary tenure had not been really regulated, and government was looking at only the three tenures: milo, leasehold, and freehold. Now that we have the certificates, they equate, the rights in that certificate are equal to a person holding freehold, and better protection for the clans and communities where you have communal land holdings. What was the second?
The previous question, slide or two. You seem to have moved very fast.
Huh?
As they get back to the other, you can take this one.
I submitted original land title for valuation as part of the transfer process. However, the title was misplaced by Wachu's officials 3 months ago. What options do I have? When you submit your title to any of these ministries and offices, insist that you get a stamp of what you retain. You must retain a copy, and insist that on the table, client's desk submission, they stamp on your documents, which you retain, so that if it gets lost, you can always take back that information, whether they stamped on your title or whether they stamped on your papers, and you show them the date when you first took in that application. But when you submit everything and you don't keep a copy, when yours is misplaced, because they will tell you it is misplaced, either it has gone with other documents or our storage registry has put it in another file. There are still some of those challenges, but make sure you always keep a copy of your documents when you submit them to land office. And when you submit them to land office, you can always complain, because there is a complaint desk that my documents are lost here, and we shall be able to call the responsible officers, because we now have customer care at those regional centers. What happens where original title has a print that does not correspond to the land title? How does one correct the mismatch? That is rare, but if it ever happened, I've not seen a print that does not correspond to the title. You must come and visit us, and then we see how did that happen. It could either have been a mistake of the survey or the process in the cartographer's office. But this is a special situation. You take my number and then we follow that up. It's a rare problem. What plans do you have in regard to the level of corruption at the land board search office? At every step I was asked for a bribe before any action. We have introduced helplines. Please, if you are asked for a bribe, call the toll-free number at the center and report that incident so that we are able to know which district or which official is taking that bribe. We are taking this very seriously and we are moving towards corrupt-free society. So please use the helpline. I'll give you, it's a toll-free number, and then you are able to call for responses.
Thank you. The first one there, they're saying that since the land search is online, why do you charge 20,000 and not make it free?
Searches are one of the, I would say, revenue collection areas for government. The money is not a lot, but that is part of the revenue that government is very strict about. There are no free searches. There are no free searches. The money goes to Ministry of Finance, and it's a lot of money that is generated through that option of searches. So that's Ministry of Finance money.
Yes, we have another one there.
We have been informed that all land was valued, but these values appear to be a secret. Why? And are developments on land considered for land transfer valuation? Actually, I talked about establishing a database. The reason why we want to get a database for values is to know how much is the value of land in the whole of Uganda at different points. So it is not yet there that all land has values. No, we are just developing that database. It's very expensive, but we have development partners that are helping us to come up with that data value. As soon as it is in place, we shall have it at different registration points, and still we will be required to pay some little money to get a search on those data values.
Then the first one there is they're asking, do we have transfer fee structures known to the public? Somebody is wondering, apparently, they say they're being cheated by lawyers.
Yes, we have the transfer fee structure. Actually, we have our fees which are regulated by the Land Act. When you look at the Land Act, at the back of the land regulations, you know the Land Act has land regulations. And there is a section on prescription of fees. They will tell you for this transaction so much, but also the Registration of Titles Act has a schedule of fees. So transfer fees in terms of valuation is now 1.5 in terms of percentage. Before we used to pay 1%. Now it is 1.5 of the value of your land. That is what they call transfer charges. But of course, the lawyers can never work for free. They will put their fees and then the transport and whatever as counsel. They will charge you, but transfer fees specifically is 1.5 of the value. So when you are doing transactions on land, insist at least to know how much was the value for this land. So you are able to calculate the 1.5%. But somebody will tell you the transfer charges are 5 million, when actually the actual valuation is like 500,000. So they will walk away with the 4.5. Insist, how was my land valued? Because if you are educated, you are able to get that information. What was the value of my land? So you are able to know and calculate that the transfer fees are 1.5 of that. Then you tell your lawyer that I think the rest is just your money, so I'm going to reduce it.
Maybe the other question would be who gives the value? People will decide to give a lower value, so pay a lower 1%, 1.5%. But there's a question there: whose obligation is it to effect a transfer on sale of land? Is it the buyer or the seller?
It is the buyer. The seller's role is to sell to you and pass on to you those documents I prescribed, your transfer forms, his photographs, and the NIN now, because it's a requirement. After that, it is you to pay all the taxes to have your land transferred into your name. So it's not the obligation of the seller, except if you agree at the point of that sale.
Thank you. Somebody is asking that please comment on media reports to the effect that minor land tenure is to be abolished.
That's not true, because we have the national land policy, and this national land policy and the constitution talk about 4 tenure systems: minor, freehold, leasehold, and customary tenure. And the 4 have been equated, I've told you, and minor land cannot just be abolished, except you have to go through a referendum, constitutional amendment, which I think cannot happen very, very quickly.
Members, we still have a bit of time. You can keep your questions coming.
There's one which I can't see, the one up there.
The top one?
Yeah,
Top one, slide off. The one, the top one there, we can't see it here. It is cut off a bit.
There's one below. Thank you. If one of the administrators on the title died and had used different names on the title compared to his national ID, how do I have him removed? There is a process of amending administrators, but this one you can only do in the Administrator General's office or through court, whereby you apply to court to have the person who has died as an administrator removed from letters of administration. So it's not the work of land office, please. You have to go back to the Administrator General, and this one, you as a buyer, you cannot do that. It remains a family obligation to choose new administrators, and this will go through the normal court process, where you have to advertise, and then you are granted a new set of letters of administration. But you cannot just do it in land office. No. There are others.
Yes. Do we have any more questions? Please keep your questions coming. as we wait for the questions coming, I have one. This one is, I'm asking on behalf of a friend of mine who works at Makerere University. This challenge is initial as a government institution. They thought the ministry should be on their side, but some of the challenges they do face is where the ministry gives a title on a title of land owned by the university. They're happy that you have been able to counsel a few,
Yeah.
but after they have gone through the challenges of court cases and very bad media, I think currently they have 2 or 3, which the ministry actually gives away. The title is already there with the Makerere. Some of it, of course, they have won for ages. What is the challenge? Why don't you be on our side and we score in the same goal?
You see, cancellation of a title will really depend on the powers of the registrar of titles, commissioner land registration, because the Registration of Titles Act will give you situations where the powers only are vested with court. In cases of fraud, in cases of like the situation of Makerere University, I know about it very well. And in cases where the whole registration process has been intermeddled with, and it will require court to pronounce itself on those issues before the cancellation can be done. They need a court order. So cases which have been complicated to determine who is the rightful owner are cases which a registrar of title is not authorized to cancel. So the powers of the registrar of title are really left with these small issues. If, for example, the plot was erroneously changed, or small correction of the register, the rest of complicated cases, you have to go it all the way until court pronounces itself, and then the register can be changed. So we have been working on Makerere, and like you have said, there have been many cases which we hope the situation will be completed. How comes automation of some land registries have taken forever? I informed you at the beginning that the process of computerization is also a complex issue, and we are working hand in hand with our development partners. And so when we first obtained funding at the beginning, we were so specific to work on records which were very old and in tatters, and the computerization was phased, working on a few offices and then spreading across the country. And so the automation will then come after you clean up the manual records. And for some areas, especially the central region, where most registration is, you found that our records were really in a bad state. And there's no way we could have computerized everything at the same time. You have to look at the survey maps. They are the ones to first they have to be scanned, cleaned up. Some it's you look at a map and almost it is not a map anymore. It is very in tatters really, and it takes a bit of time and training to enter that information into the computer. Even it involves calling people with titles in those respective areas. We had a lot of problems in areas where the war hit our land offices and all the data was destroyed. That is why the automation could not be done at the same time and be completed at the same time. We still have a few challenges in some offices where you find that even up to now, some data, major data is still missing, and we keep collecting and collecting from people who have titles, especially the big mine owners who had huge square miles. So when they bring back their title, that is when we are able to correct and we continue to perfect.
Thank you. I think now I will take a few questions from our colleagues who are attending through Zoom, and I'll pick 2 or 3 at a time. The first one is to thank you for today's topic, but the question is property now considered when valuing land for transfer purposes? And the second one, somebody is wondering, how do I verify that a title is authentic and not from NASA Road?
Yes, I'll start with the latter one. I told you that the new computerized title has special features. I talked about the barcode. I talked about the map is now this, the deed print is part of the title. And I talked about the photographs, but we also talked about their specific features that are printed on that title, so that when you use a scanner, you are able to know this is original title and this is a fake title. But there are so many fake out there. It's only and only when it comes back to the registry that it is scanned and we are able to tell this is fake. It's like money. A lot of fake money is out there, but it's only when it comes into the scanning arena that we are able to know this money is fake. The bank will detect it, and a few supermarkets with those scanning instruments. What was the first one? Yes, property is considered. It's only unfortunate that when people are filling in transfer forms in order to avoid too much tax, where there is development, there is a component where they tell you prescribed development. Is your land developed or not? People will put nil so that they don't attract what? Bigger values. But once we have the databases, it will be able to show you, because it will pick. Even now, when they are suspicious that this area is developed, the valuer will have to tell you that let's go and visit the ground. Because you can really put nil when they know there is a map, there is a house there. And nowadays it is so easy, they even use the Google Maps. They will scan and be able to tell there is a building. If the property is developed, then the valuation is with property.
Okay. Then another person is asking, this is Moses Akol, who supervises private land surveyors? And related to that, somebody also is asking whether there's guidance on charges by surveyors.
Who supervises surveyors? I said survey profession was privatized, so it's negotiation, but we are amending the Survey Act to provide not only the professional guidance and supervision, but also to regulate their fees. We are amending the Surveyors Registration Act to specifically guide on those 2 issues, because it's a big challenge.
Thank you. This question comes from Dorothy Kiaga Seka. She thanks you for the presentation. And she says, in fact, I thought we don't have physical planning in this country. Land planning is really in a sorry state. What are we planning to improve on effectiveness of that function? How does government land get claimed by individuals? And she gives an example in our village where an individual took over staff house land for a UP school with no remorse?
I think it calls for being responsible as Ugandans, because I told you that Uganda Land Commission is the institution responsible to manage government land. But over time, people have gone and either squatted on it, applied for it, or grabbed it. So there is a commission which is going around to inspect all government land. But when it first went out, it did not receive any welcome from the districts, because the chief administrative officers were directed to assist this committee. But they themselves, being victims, they found it very difficult to show the committee that government land is here and here and there. Now they have changed their strategy. They have to find the land across the country by the way. And I told you government land is either registered or not registered. So different people have applied for it, but they are now streamlining and coming up with what they have called a government inventory. So that inventory will show where the land is located across all the districts. And so we shall be able to find those people who have raised government buildings and constructed their own properties. So it's not been easy because of many people who have just settled on government land with no remorse. But the inventory is being worked out by the Uganda Land Commission.
Yeah, thank you. This is from Andrew Kawere. He's asking, do I need government approval to grant a lease of my Milo land?
No. If you have Milo land, you own it in perpetuity. And if you want to give somebody a lease out of Milo, those are private arrangements. You don't need any consent from government. You determine your own terms.
Okay, I hope Andrew Kawere has got it there. Then next from Margaret Namakula, she's asking, what are the procedures of acquiring special title? How is the original owner protected in case the application for a special title is a fraud? And I think this is where some of the Makerere land has gone.
Special titles are applied for where you have lost your duplicate. And I told you we call it duplicate. The public calls it original. But for us, we know that the original is what is left with the registry. And so if you ever lose your title, you have to make an application. And that application, you forward it to Commissioner Land Registration. You state through an affidavit how you lost it. And once you file those papers, then the Commissioner Land Registration will issue with a notice, which you then take to Uganda Gazette. Uganda Gazette is in UPPC, but they have an office in Kampala. So you take your notice, and those notices always appear in those Gazette notices, and it will run for 30 days. After that 30 days, you get the print of that Gazette notice and you take it back to the registry and you pay the required fees. And they will issue with a special certificate. So it runs through you applying, and then you swear an affidavit informing us how you lost it. If it was stolen, you may have to attach a police letter. And then you follow the normal process and you pay the required fees. Gazette notices are expensive, so you have to put that in.
Thank you. We still have a few. We also still have, I think, about 20 minutes. So I can still take some of this. This is the Steel Mugabe is asking, why do we still have land in Kampala that is not registered or where files cannot be found?
I don't believe there is land that is not registered in Kampala. Because all Kampala plots, call it land, is already surveyed. What is happening are these remote areas where you used to have Bibanja. And those ones, the small Bibanja, is what you see people are surveying. But when you are talking about Kampala, all the plots have been surveyed and they are either having expired leases. It may not be known that this lease expired, but when you look at all plots in Kampala, they have a title. The title is what could have expired, or the title may have been abandoned. You've heard about custodian board properties. Most of those properties belong to Asians, and so this new parliamentary committee, COSASE, those properties, has discovered lots and lots of properties that originally belonged to Asians, either were destroyed by war, or they were run down, or they look like they don't have titles. But when you dig down into our register, there are titles there. Where there are no titles, that is neither land. The Bibanjas are still there. But on public land, they have titles. It is either that the title has expired and the family has not come back to the registry, or the land is formally under custodian board, or it is government land. So those are cases for Kampala. But there's nothing like unregistered land.
Thank you. Edith Manyire is having a question here. It says it has been a habit of Minister of Lands to issue duplicate titles on already titled land to fake land grabbers. How can you advise and comfort those with genuine titles as a protection measure? And how can one identify the genuine titles? I think this one will look at the other one. But she wants the comfort for the people with genuine titles, given these duplicates to what she calls the fraudsters.
I said we are going to establish public portals everywhere because we now have only at URSB where you can do your quick searches, but we are establishing these public portals so that you are able to search upon payment of a specific fee. You can search your title wherever you will be. That will reassure you at least that my title is in the system. It's a genuine one. If you ever search and you don't find your title, begin to ask yourself whether you have a genuine title or somebody defrauded you and they gave you a fake one. So these public portals are going to help very much. But even for now, you can still go and search at the registry in that zonal office to find out whether the title you hold is a genuine title. I've seen many cases. I happen to be working a lot with the diaspora, and their worry was people, the relatives in this country have defrauded relatives abroad because they assure them that there is a title. Because once I send you a title, you can never know whether it's genuine or it's not genuine. So these are family titles where administrators are selling off all the land. and there are a lot of disputes. But once you are able to search on the system, or when you get an opportunity, do a search to be reassured that what you are holding is genuine. And if you don't find your title in the system, ask, and then you'll get that explanation.
Thank you. Godfrey Watoro Mateba, thanks you for the insightful information on land management in Uganda. His question is, for infrastructure projects where government projects are impacting on people's land, compensations are made, but the main pain is when individual titles are submitted to land office to demarcate the parcel of the land that has been compensated for. I think he has challenges with the part left for him. What is the way forward for them? He has a lot of pain there. I think he has been failed to get his partial there.
Yeah, we have had a lot of challenges with acquiring entities. The UNRAs, the UMEMES, the power lines, when they collect your title, when they are doing projects, they say we have submitted your title to our surveyor. The surveyors are responsible for cutting off the portion which the infrastructure is taking and returning to your title. But I've seen some titles take a long time. And when they are with those entities, the surveyors of those very entities take the opportunity using that mutation form. I didn't even talk about a mutation form, but that mutation form is the one the owner signs saying, I have given away 0.5 of my land. So this surveyor, if you are not very wise, will take that mutation form and chop off more land. By the time they return your title, they have gotten land for themselves. So it's been a very big challenge, and we are putting it to these respective acquiring entities to return people's titles in time. To return people's titles in time, because they have their own surveyors and they actually do the work, but they don't return the titles on time, and they do many things with those titles. If you are not very knowledgeable, you may not even know they have taken more land than what you have given to them or what they have compensated you for. So you need to be more curious when the agency asks you for your title. If they are not taking the whole title, you be very conscious. How much are they taking? And you know, we write land in hectares. Many people don't know how to compute hectares into acres. 2.47 is the equivalent of 1 hectare. 2.47 acres. So because we compute in hectares, they will put for you 0.6, and you may not take it to know that how much is 0.6. So there they can be able to play with your land, especially if it is huge land.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, about 10 minutes to go. The interactions, the questions can still come through. One of them comes from Geoffrey Barige. He states that land brokers usually perpetuate fraudulent land transactions. Are there any plans to effectively regulate the activities of land brokers, popularly known as the Kayungirizi, by government?
Yes, we recognize it's a very big problem, and actually they are responsible for all these illegal fees, because every time we put up a poster to register land is so much, you are supposed to pay 1.5 of stamp duty on your valuation. You'll find next day they have pulled down all those posters and that information. So we have agreed to put it online on our website. You will go and find the fees on www.moluhood.org. MLHUD.UG. So you will find they are responsible because this is their business. They don't want transparency. They will ask you, where will we eat? For you, you are paid a salary. So they see it as an interference. There's a lot of conflict. So we are writing the law to regulate these real estates, dealers, communities of that, so that we regulate them, but we still insist we publish our fees so that if they are adding anything on top, it should be known that they are adding. Because where you say 1.5, they charge 15%. Where you say 1%, they charge 10%. So it is a whole range of abuse. But we continue to publish through the website the payment, the fees payable.
Thank you. The next one comes from Annette Simbwas. She's asking, how could someone search about the genuineness of condominium title?
Still through our portals or the registry, you are able to know what you have, whether it's genuine or it's not genuine. Walk to the nearest ministration office or go to your SP downtown in Kampala.
The next one comes from Francis Nteza, and he states here that when computerization started, you dropped all the long history of the title and instead you only stated the current owner. That alone made the titles accessible to fraud because all the ancestors from whom ownership had moved over generations was lost. Why did you do such a bad thing?
I like that. That challenge has always been raised, but you see our computerization system, what we are leaving, information, that information is not lost. So when you come to do a search and you want the history, you still find it as part of our record. But we don't carry it now on the title. We will just leave the last person who has registered. But that information, if you want it, it's with us. You can search all the way through the system and get to know the root of the title, as we call it, that information. So we did not do bad, but with computerization, there's a way they say that once you give the system a lot of data, then you have slowed it down. So there's a limit to how much information you can bring up speed. We also used to complain about that. You see, the developers will tell you this is a lot of information. So you need to limit how much you can release, or else the system will be so slow. That is the argument. But that information is there. If you want to find the original, the first person who owned that piece of land, it is there. You will find it. It is there. Because we scanned our records as they were, the manual ones. We entered them in the system. So we have the history, but at the back.
Okay, thank you. We'll take one or two questions from the Zoom team, then get back to the Slido group. Tom Paggi is asking, also related to computerization, says apart from computerizing the title generation process, which is a welcome step, what other steps is the ministry taking to speed up title transfers and make the process more transparent? For example, Tom Paggi has been told that the transfer of his Uganda title has been delayed by your evaluation for over a year now.
That's a lie. You cannot have valuation for a title for a full year. I have told you we have 22 centers. And at all those 22 centers, there is a valuer, a fiscal planner, a registrar, and a land officer. Each one having different roles on that system. So You can't tell me that a valuation has taken a full year. Why? Come and see me and we ask whoever has the paper. You may find that the person you gave your papers has not even gone to land office. They either ate the money or these dealers used to use that as one of their weapons. Land office is closed. There's nothing going on. But land office closes when you have held my title for 1 year. Now you are saying land office has closed. Now even when they open, people are still telling others that land office is not working, COVID. And I've had some cases, I was working in the land office in some year. And that time I had people were saying that lady went on maternity leave. I took my leave and I came back. But that information was still out there. She went on leave. So one person comes and says, but this lady, the man chasing my title told me the lady went on maternity leave. And I waited. Now after a year, the man still told me the lady is still on maternity leave. Is that true? Then I called the registrar as I was in my office and I put her on loud and I told her, are you still on maternity leave? And she laughed. She said, maternity leave? How can I be on maternity leave for all this long? So the client was right there listening. So you have received lots of lies. Women, they go on maternity leave, they don't come back. Others go for training, the officer has gone for training, no replacement. And yet that's not true information. But as a responsible citizen, try to find out, probe further. Make a telephone call and say, you people, is this person working or not working? Visit the Amazon. How can you be too busy and you don't even know the door of the land office? That's bad for a profession. You rely on lies and you rely on your lies, you are screwed, but you don't even bother to find out, is this information I'm being given true or not true?
Okay, thank you. Let me pick the last question from the Zoom team, then we get back to Slido. Bukulu is requesting you to address the following questions. One, don't you think the 1995 Constitution created more problems than solutions with the introduction of bona fide occupants? We have since had more land wrangles than before. Please explain. Then two, says, if I'm not mistaken, some time back, there was a disagreement about a disputed boundary in northern Uganda, and there were voices to the effect that they were going to London for arbitration. Yet we have competent officers you alluded to. Please clarify. And then the last question he has here, that was a normal report over water or land. Has the Migingo Island question been resolved? I also had a media quoting some big persons that the fish belongs to Uganda, but the water belongs to another country. Please clarify.
Mijingo. I'll start with Mijingo. Mijingo is a very interesting dispute between Kenya and Uganda, but it has been resolved. But of course, the surveyors had to go to UK to get those original maps, it's true. Because the archives in London, every time we have international border disputes, one country will not believe the other. And so they have had to go to tours. The surveyor generals of each country have always had to fly and go to UK because UK has all those original maps. And once they come from UK, then they'll come back and do the actual survey. So when they did that, Uganda and the Kenya surveyors flew to UK they found that Mijingo was for Uganda. And so Kenya seized the fire. It seized the fire. So that one was sorted right away. On lawful and bona fide occupants, yes, it's a very big challenge on Milo because the 1975 Land Reform Decree, which declared all land public land and abolished Milo land and freehold, they left one tenure, that was business. But at that time, you find that if government wanted to do any project, they would just give notice to the occupants because land was government land. All land was government land. Even my land, it was government land. And you'd find that those lawful and bona fide occupants were not there. Everybody was equal. So with the coming into force of the 1995 Constitution, they went back and dug through all our old laws, the Busuru and the Vujo law. People were paying the Busuru, all those things. And some of those reforms are still a big challenge because you find a lawful owner. I've been to some places, Mubende, Mitiana. These people have chased away the landlords. They have killed others. And you know it's a big challenge. And you find that a Chibanja owner who is a lawful bona fide occupant is occupying the whole land. The square mile has gone and the owner has nothing. And they don't pay the Busuru. So what government is trying to do is to negotiate with the landowners where the land is fully tenanted and the landowner cannot even use it. Government is buying it through the land fund so that the landlord can go and get something, some compensation for their land. Otherwise, that law as is requires that when you are a Chibanja owner on somebody's piece of land, you pay them a non-annual nominal ground rent. And it is this rent which really has caused a lot of problems because if you are occupying my 200 acres and the law is saying whether you are occupying 100 acres or 0.5, you pay the same amount, regardless of location, regardless of user. You could be harvesting trees, millions of money, but you are paying me peanuts. So there is unfairness there. And what government is doing, we are reviewing most of these laws because of their failure to practically solve the problem.
Okay, we now go back to Slido. There's a question there. Somebody's asking, my parent bought land in the early 1980s and only have a land agreement. I think they have a sale agreement there. How can they acquire land title and how much will it be? How much will it cost?
The first question you need to answer, what tenure did they buy? Then you follow through the process. You are talking about an agreement on Milo, on Customary, on what? That then will determine the procedure which you will use to get your title. The cost, I've told you, will involve surveying, registration, and if the parents are dead, then you have to walk into Administrator General's office. So it will depend on what tenure and what agreement do you have and the current status.
The first one there, they're saying that many of the computerized titles are not showing details of neighbors. And this has caused the disputes among neighbors. Why are such details omitted?
Neighbors.
Neighbors to the plot.
Neighbors. Of course,
The
depending.
neighbors and roads.
Of course, depending on what tenure you are talking about. For example, when you look at mile tenure, even if there is a road, it may not be shown on your plot, the road. But when you visit the cadastre, when you take your title to the registry, the cartographer will tell you, or the surveyor, that you see this line here, that is the road. So it depends on how you interpret your title. You may not know that the line means this, or the road is provided for at the edge or at this point. But what is important, that information, like I have told you, is not lost. It is there in our system. And if you ask, you would be able to interpret the title, the copy they have given you, and what information is retained in the computer. And in the case of disputes, you just go and they'll print for you the whole map, the map of the area, and it will show the roads. And when there is need for a surveyor to open the boundaries, they'll still collect that map. And they will go and tell you that your boundaries pass here. They say they open the stone. That's the local language. So opening boundaries means they identify where the stones were put, the mark stones. But the information is there in the system. And they can't put everything on that title. It would make the speed of that land information very slow if they were going to put each and everything. But when it comes to interpretation, you ask, what does this line mean? What does this information mean? And if it is missing, where do I get it from? But when you apply for a certificate of customary ownership, the sketch that is drawn by the area land committee, for example, in leases and freeholds and customary ownership, will indicate the neighbors, that sketch. So that information, we have it.
Yeah, thank you. There's a question there. If I cannot get the national ID of the seller and they're out of the country, what can I do?
You can, the only other document that is acceptable is a passport. Passport. For people who don't live here, or for people who have never got a name.
So I think you have added, let them send you a copy of their passport. The last question down there, a person paid stamp duty based on the sale contract at purchase, and URA issued a receipt as a memorandum and document fees. Will that cover the stamp duty on transfer?
No. Stamp duty is determinable on the basis of the information on the value of the land you intend to transfer. So URA cannot just issue a receipt without the valuer having put that value on your transfer form. And they can't issue a receipt except if that information is correlated. Because I told you now the systems are networked. The valuer who is assessing you will enter that information through a form, a URA form, and from their screen, they will be able to see it. So it's only when the valuer has put the figure that the stamp duty is projected the other side. And then they can issue a receipt. And they no longer issue big receipts. They are smaller receipts, but with barcodes. So when you screen that receipt itself, it will show you this money has been received or the money was not received.
I think we've answered a number of the questions. There's still a few which have come through, but most of them are related. But maybe I'll just give you this very last one. As Samson Boyer is asking that there are blocks of land in Luero which derive from titles said to have been issued around the 1950s from Bombo. New claimants are coming up saying they have titles issued in 1920s from Entebbe. What right do the current landholders in 2020 deriving from the 1950s titles have given the two opposing claims?
In land registration, we say first in time, first in right. That is the principle of land registration. First in time, first in right. The moment you survey your land, it is put on that cadastral sheet. It will come back with a plot number, and a plot number. That is the description of your land. So if you registered your land in 1950 and somebody comes in 2020, who is right? First in time, first in right, except where is fraud. And you have a tall order to say there was fraud in 1950 because of the law of limitation and bona fide purchase for value without notice. You have a tall order. So you cannot have people coming in these recent years to challenge titles that were issued in that. No. It is the lawyers that may come and confuse you, but for us, we know first in time, first in right.
Okay. I want to thank you for the very interactive session. I hope as you leave here, most of your questions have been answered. We still have a number of them coming through by the Zoom people. I hope the Secretariat will pick them up and allow the Commissioner to answer them at an appropriate time. I think from this meeting, some of you who have acres are not able to translate them into hectares or vice versa. They gave you the figure to use. If you don't know how many acres are in an hectare, just multiply by something called 2.47. You know which direction you take. You should also know which is bigger. Some people actually think an acre is the biggest denomination of land. As I assure you, it is not. I want to thank you very much for this very insightful presentation. You can see people are very attentive. Like I indicated earlier, all these are landowners. Some of them are planning to transfer land even now. They might have wanted to find out how quick it is to transfer land. Can I transfer it in a day? If I wanted somebody to have it. But I want to thank you very much. I think you have given us very detailed insights into land matters. Before I call the day's MC to get on board, as a culture of the Institute, they are going to give you an umbrella, a bag, and I think some dressing that shows that you've been at the Institute. I was going to give it to you, but I'm told due to social distancing, I cannot even shake your hands. But shortly as you step aside, it's just on the table here. I've been advised by the medical team that very few hands should be touching those items. People, I want to thank you for braving the cold morning and being up here in these numbers, both physically and the hundreds of members online. This morning session comes to an end. I hand you over to today's MC. Thank you.
Thank you, CPA Walter, for ably chairing the session. Can we appreciate him again? I think that was very insightful. I could look at all your faces. I think we have many CPA brokers as well. The concentration was World Cup. But thank you very much for being a good audience in the first session. When we came here very early, I spoke sunshine. I think we were just 7 people and it was raining. I told it was a sunny day. I think you can see the sun. We have a living God somewhere. Please do remember to observe SOPs, social distance, strictly no hugs. I won't even talk about the kisses. Don't embrace, don't handshake, so that we have all of you alive by the time the year ends. COVID is for real, like they say, and it's business unusual. So we have come to the end of this session, and we are going to take a health break. After that, we shall return here for our next session, which will be planning for retirement. What next? And this is especially a good topic for those of us who have seen more than one president. Those of you of one president, I think, are about 36 years, if I'm right. But the teenagers and the men who are here when the current president came, we should be thinking, planning for retirement. So please make sure you purpose to be here after your tea break. So for now, we can disperse. Once again, let's appreciate the presenter. I think we took the most questions I've seen at these sessions. There were over 53 questions asked, and you answered all of them. When we invite you next time, please do come again. Your gifts are very safe there, like the chairman has indicated, but due to rules on social distancing, we shall not be handing them to you physically, but accept them from ICPAU. I thank you, and we can disperse for the health break. Thank you. For those online, I think you can also take a break for tea, if you're near your tea. Otherwise, we shall send it for you scientifically. Thank you. Ask for it.